Defiler of Faith is a 5 mana, 5 Earth Vigilance. It turns all your white mana into Phyrexian mana, and it has, whenever you cast a white permanent spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. So having a Defiler in white is kind of interesting, because white is really good at gaining life, but it's really bad at drawing cards. So when it comes in, you probably won't have that many cards to use the Phyrexian mana on, unless you're playing a really mid-range deck. So I don't think this card would see play in mono white aggro. I feel like that deck is too fast for this. But like every Defiler, I think this card might just form a deck around it, a mid-range deck. And I was looking at all the cards that have a lot of white, and I couldn't find much. I could basically find Invoke Justice, which could be pretty good with it, because you only need to spend 1 mana for it. But I feel like this card is slightly too slow. So Phoenix Chick is a 1 red mana, 1/1 flying haste phoenix that can't block, and whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay double red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and attacking with a 1/1 counter on it. So a 1 mana, 1/1 flying haste that can't block is actually a pretty decent card. You play this early, it's going to get you a lot of damage, and if they chump block it, you're fine with it, because you can bring it back for 2 mana attacking with 3 creatures. And if you're playing Phoenix Chick, a 4-of, it's a really good card to have tapped and attacking, so it makes it easier for you to cast it from the grave. So yeah, I think this card is auto-include mono red. I think it's really strong and cute as hell. So Inscribed Tablet is a 1 mana artifact that has 1 tap. Sacrifice Inscribed Tablet. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library, put a land cards from among them into your hand, and the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. If you didn't put a card into your hand this way, draw a card. I like that if you can't get a land, you draw a card. I feel like they definitely didn't need to put that on the card, but it makes it a lot more consistent. And I think this is okay. I think it's cooler if you're looking for like not basic but like special lands that your deck needs. And it's also colorless, so it kind of fits in every deck. So I think maybe some decks would like this. It depends how good lands are. So Founding the Third Path is a 2 mana saga with read ahead, so you can choose what chapter to start on. The first chapter is, you may cast an instant sorcery spell with mana 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. It is chapter 2, target player mills 4 cards. And chapter 3 is, exile target instant sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you may cast the copy. So chapter 1 is pretty good. You pay 2 mana and then you can pay 2 mana spells, so that's some good tempo. I think this card is sweet. I know chapter 1 is card disadvantage because you're paying 2 cards to pay 1, but the last chapter makes it okay because it gives you an extra card from your graveyard. I like the chapter 2 because let's say you want to cast a big spell, you play this on chapter 2, and then you mill 4 cards, so you might get a card even better than what you want to do. And then on the next turn, when it goes to chapter 3, your mana is all untapped, so you can cast the big thing. It also works as kind of a sorcery speed Snapcaster Mage. And this card is insane. It's a modern staple. It sees a ton of play. So recreating that in a standard environment would be really good. So yeah, I think this card is crazy flexible. It does so many good things, and I'm sure it'll see play. So Pilfer is 1 and 1 black for a sorcery that says target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card. So Pilfer is very similar to Thoughtseize. It does the same thing, except Thoughtseize you're paying 2 life, and Pilfer paying 1 extra mana. So I think paying 2 life is stronger than 1 mana, but that doesn't mean the card is bad. It's still a nightmare for control decks and combo decks. So Temporary Lockdown is 1 of any color and 2 white, enchantment. When Temporary Lockdown enters the battlefield, exile each non-land permanent with mana 2 or less until Temporary Lockdown leaves the battlefield. So this card is very meta dependent. If there's a lot of 2-drops in the game, this card gets crazy. It is really good against only Cult Anvil, because most of the cards they have there are 2 or less. It also takes up Bank Buster and Meat Hook Massacre. So this card could see a decent amount of play. It just really depends how aggressive it is. If the meta is super aggressive, this card is sweet. It gets hit by Boseiju, which really sucks. That's probably the worst part about it, because if they hit it, you get all the things back. So Fires of Victory is a 1 and 1 red instant with kicker 2 and 1 blue. If this spell was kicked, draw a card, and then Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. So I think this card would actually be pretty decent in a control deck. A control deck that draws a lot of cards, because you want to have at least 5 cards. More than that, it gets pretty insane. But it also, the kicker helps you with that. It can be a pretty big 2-for-1. So yeah, I think this is a control all-star in standard. No, I don't think any more further than that. So Twin Inferno is 1 and 1 red for an instant that has choose 1. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose a new target for the copy. And it also has target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. I think this card would be pretty good in the Boros deck, because it does 2 things the deck wants. First of all, you can copy a lightning strike and deal extra damage to your opponent, and you can give a creature double strike and finish your opponent that way. So I think it's very flexible in that deck, and might see like a 1 of or a 2 of at most. No 4 ofs, because it's kind of clunky if you don't have anything else to hit. But yeah, interesting card. I think it might see some play. So Joint Exploration is 1 mana and 1 blue for an instant with a kicker 1 green. Scry 2, then draw a card. If this spell was kicked, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. I am so excited I can finally talk about this card. One of my favorite cards ever is Growth Spiral. Growth Spiral was played, it was strong, it was good, and I think this card is even better. I would definitely pay 1 extra mana to scry 2, but this card gives you flexibility. You don't need to pay the kicker. You can scry 2 to draw a card. That's good enough, but it's also really good when you do pay the kicker, because it comes in untapped, so it feels like you haven't even spent the green mana. So yeah, I think this card is going to see a lot of play, as I think a better Growth Spiral. So yeah, I am very excited for this. Simic is my favorite combination. Weatherlight Completed is 2 mana for a legendary artifact vehicle 5/5 who has flying. As long as Weatherlight Completed has 4 or more Phyrexis counters on it, it's a Phyrexian creature in addition to its other type. And whenever a creature you control dies, put a Phyrexis counter on Weatherlight Completed. Then draw a card if it has 7 or more Phyrexis counter on it. If it doesn't, scry 1. So for a 2 mana card, it actually does a lot. If you, let's say you're on the play and you get this on turn 2, it's not a creature, right? So it'll survive for a long time. And every time your creature dies, you get this value to a point where you could easily get a 2 mana 5/5 flying. And then if it keeps on surviving, which is harder now that it's a creature, it can start drawing cards. I think this card is really good on the play, but it's atrocious. It's really bad when you top deck it. Let's say you're in a top deck war and you top deck it. It does nothing. It's 2 mana, does nothing. So it's an interesting card. And I think if there's like a black deck, maybe 1 of these, because it's legendary, so you don't want more than like 2. So yeah, interesting card. Slimefoot Survey is 4 of any color and 1 green for a sorcery. It has search your library for up to 2 land cards that each have a basic land type. Put them onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Look at the top X card of your library. X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put 1 of them into your library and the rest on the bottom in a random order. They have finally made a card that can get triomes. I've been looking for one of those ever since Domain came out, and this one's a bit slow, honestly. But it gets you 2 lands, and if you're doing it right, you're getting triomes of every color. You're making it sure that your domain is going to hit for 5, so you get to look 5 cards into your deck and get the best card there. That's pretty strong. But it looks really, really bad against aggressive decks. Because basically, what they saw, you spent 5 mana and done nothing. They'll take advantage of that, and they will win the game. So, it's not the best card, but it might see some play in some ramp domain decks, if that's the thing. Stronghold Arena is a 1 and 1 black enchantment with kicker white or green. When Stronghold Arena enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life for each time it was kicked, and then you have whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to this mana value. So this would be really good into a very aggressive deck with a bunch of 1-drops, because you want to play 1-drop, then play this, then hit, get the card, and then play more 1-drops, more elusive things, and then just have this as your value engine. I don't like that it loses life. It overcomes this difficulty with the kicker gaining you life. Let's say you're playing against Boros aggro, and they are attacking you a ton. Like you're at low life. You play this, you kick it twice. You don't even care about the last ability because that's a May, and you just gain the 6 life, and it gives you a bit of time. But on the control matchup, most of the time you don't care about your life. So this card gets really good at keeping up with them, even if you're running a low curve. So Urborg Lurgoyf is 1 of any color and 1 green for a Lurgoyf who's star +1 star. He has kicker, blue or black. As Urborg Lurgoyf enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards for each time he was kicked. And it has Urborg Lurgoyf powers equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and toughness is equal to that number +1. So Wizards has been pushing a mill subtype, and I think a card that has a lot of synergy with the Urborg Lurgoyf is Monstrosity Worldleech. So this has, it's 4 mana, it's star, has kicker blue. When he enters the battlefield, you mill 4 cards if he was kicked. And also his power and toughness equal to the value among cards in your graveyard. And then both of the cards, the Lurgoyf and the Worldleech, really work with Writhing Necromath. So Writhing Necromath is a 7 mana 5/5 Death Touch, and he costs 1 less for each card in your graveyard. So Monster Worldleech, if you mill this, Monstrous Worldleech would become a 7/7 for 4, which is pretty good. But he's also really good in your hand, because if you're running a lot of creatures, which you should be if you're running Urborg Lurgoyf because of the last ability, he becomes really cheap and effective. So I don't think this deck will be tier 1, but it's still like worth talking about. If they print some more cards that really work with it, it could be a cool strategy. So yeah, I think Urborg Lurgoyf in that deck would excel, because you can play it as a 2-drop, but you also play him as a 3 and 4-drop, giving you a bunch of value by milling all those cards. So yeah, it's interesting. So Colossal Growth is 1 and 1 green for an instant. It has kicker 1 red. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. If that spell was kicked, instead that creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. So I don't think the 2 mana side of this card is very strong. 2 mana for +3 is bad. But if you add 1 red, then it gets pretty crazy. You not only get 1/1/1, but trample and haste. And that can end games. The haste is awkward because the more you spend on this spell, the less you can play. So a lot of the time you can't get out your big creature unless it's really late in the game. And if it is really late in the game, the creature's probably big and trample is going to be a lot of damage. So yeah, I like this card, but it's not like the best card. It's okay. I think it might see like 1 over 2 odds in some decks. So yeah. So Warhouse Frenzy is 2 and a red for an instant with kicker 1 black. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, whenever a creature you control dies this turn, you draw a card. So this card's kind of awkward with the kicker, because if you're giving +2/+0 to all your creatures, you're probably winning that game if you're doing that politely. So the card draw doesn't really matter, but it's still a good thing. It's basically in case you don't win the game, then you have a ton of card draw. So yeah, if card decks are going really wide, maybe they want one of these, but I'm not sure. I'm not too confident on this card seeing play. It could be funny if they board wipe you and you play this in response, draw a ton of cards. Like, that could be okay. So Timeless Lotus is a 5 mana legendary artifact that enters the battlefield tapped, and then you can tap it to add 1 of each color. In the 5 color commander deck, this card's not included. I would absolutely run it in every single 5 color deck. But it's way too slow for standard. You're paying 5 mana for something that's tapped, for something that can be hit by Boseiju. You'll be dead before you can use it. Rendezvelt Horde Master is a 1 and 1 red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. When Rendezvelt Horde Master or another goblin you control dies, exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. So I don't think in standard we have the critical mass of goblins. We do have one new good goblin coming out, and that's really good at this one, is Squid Dubious Monarch. I think Squid's really good with this because he puts out 2 bodies when he attacks. So instead of being 3 total power, he becomes 5. And also, these cards are made to die. They're made to be blocked. either Squid or the red goblin he makes. And when he does, he'll give you value on this card. But to hit consistently goblin every time a goblin dies, you need way more goblins, and I just don't think there is enough for standard. The Dolian Mineslinger is 1 and 2 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. It has kicker 1 in a red and or 1 in a green when he enters the battlefield, with 2 counters on for each time it was kicked. When this creature enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature with power less than this creature's power for as long as you control this creature. So the part I don't like about this card is as a 3-drop, because you have to hit a creature with 1 power, and those are really rare. You won't see that because it has to be less than his power, so you can't get a 2-drop. You gotta get a 1-drop. It's kind of fun with walls because they have such low power, but as he scales up, he can hit things that are way more relevant, like anything with power 3 or more. Every time you up his strength, you make it harder for him to get killed, so he's more useful. So if you can get to 7, you get a 6/6, and you get to steal any creature they have, and then they'll have a hard time fighting this creature because he's a 6/6. But how he gets really strong is if you have something to interact with that creature that you stole. Is the sacrifice outlet? Is it blocking with it so it dies, so it never comes back? So yeah, I could see this card in a team or ramp deck where they just use it to slow your opponent down, take his creatures, and block with them. So, decent card. So those were all the cards I thought were interesting that came out today. Like and subscribe, please. I'm just starting. I really need a boost to start getting out there. Hopefully you liked the video. Thank you guys so much. Bye.